Today, we're getting into something pretty heavy. Actually, the big spike in anxiety and depression among kids and teenagers.
Yeah, it's a topic that hits home for a lot of people.
Definitely. And we're going to be looking at it mainly through the lens of Jonathan Haidt's work, especially his book, The Anxious Generation. We'll pull from his interviews and talks, too.
He frames it as this great rewiring of childhood, basically how things shifted from kids playing outside to, well, being on their phones.
Right. And for you listening, we know you want to get the core ideas quickly without feeling totally swamped, so we've tried to structure this clearly.
Makes sense.
So let's just jump in. What really changed for kids growing up in, say, the early 2010s, and, what have the consequences been?
Well, I think the speed of the change is maybe the most startling part. Lots of us remember childhoods with, a lot more freedom.
Oh, totally. Being outside, unsupervised mostly.
Yeah, climbing things, exploring the neighborhood, maybe getting into a little bit of trouble, but figuring things out. There was risk, but it felt manageable, part of learning.
For sure. I remember just being told, be home when the streetlights come on. Bikes, Ford scrapes, and bruises were just normal. It feels really different from kids today, often indoors, on devices.
It is quite a contrast, and Haidt points to a couple of big factors converging. One was the safety-first movement back in the 90s.
Ah, right. I remember the milk cartons and stranger danger awareness.
Exactly. Media coverage of abductions ramped up, even though statistically crime rates were actually falling. But parents, understandably, got more worried.
So more hovering, less letting kids roam free.
Pretty much. More supervision, less independent play. And this cultural shift happened right alongside this huge technological wave.
Okay, let's map that tech timeline, the early internet.
Hmm.
That felt pretty positive initially, didn't it? Like access to information, connecting people.
Yeah, there was a lot of optimism. And Haidt notes that millennials who grew up with that early dial-up version didn't seem to have the same sharp mental health decline later on.
Interesting. So what changed?
Well, then came social media, properly taking off around 2004. But the real earthquake was the smartphone. Between roughly 2010 and 2015, they just exploded.
Everyone got one really fast.
Unprecedented speed of adoption. By the middle of that decade, it was weirder not to have a smartphone, especially for teens.
And this is Haidt's core argument, right? That this exact period, 2010 to 2015, when smartphones took over, is also when we see youth mental health just plummet globally. He draws that stark picture. The 80s kid on a bike versus the 2015 kid alone with a phone.
Yeah, the correlation in timing is hard to ignore, even if proving direct causation is always complex.
So this massive shift in how kids were spending their hours, what were the first signs that things are going wrong with, like their well-being?
The mental health data is where it gets really concerning. Starting around 2012, particularly for adolescent girls, rates of reported anxiety and depression just shot up.
The hockey stick graphs he shows?
Exactly that shape, a really steep increase. And tragically, you also see a rise in things like psychiatric emergency room visits for girls during that same time frame. Self-harm rates, too.
Oh, wow. That's really sobering. Was it just girls, or did boys experience this too?
It affected boys, too, definitely. Haidt points out an increase in depression and social withdrawal for them as well, though maybe the pattern looked a bit different.
How so?
He suggests potential links to the increased availability and immersive nature of online pornography and video games, leading to what he terms problematic use.
Problematic use, meaning it starts interfering with real life.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Spending so much time on these things that it pushes out other stuff. Sleep, school, friendships, family time, maybe feeling unable to stop, even if it's causing problems. A kind of withdrawal from the physical world.
And this idea connects to something else you mentioned, being forever elsewhere.
Right, that's a concept from Sherry Turkle. The phone creates this state of divided attention. You're physically here, but your mind is constantly pulled towards the device, the notifications, the online world.
So even when you're technically with people, you're not fully present.
Exactly. And Haidt argues this impacts not just schoolwork. He points to PISA survey data showing kids felt less like they belonged at school after smartphones became common, but also that fundamental sense of social connection and belonging in the real world.
It's like the device offers one kind of connection, but maybe gets in the way of deeper face-to-face connection.
That's a good way to put it.
Which brings us back to Haidt's central idea, the Great Rewiring of Childhood. This double whammy, less independent real-world play, and way more time in the virtual world.
Precisely. And the crucial point he makes is that the virtual world, especially social media and games, often doesn't provide the same developmental nutrients as old-fashioned free play.
Nutrients. What kind of nutrients?
Think about kids playing in a park or backyard without adults constantly stepping in. They have to figure out rules, handle disagreements, negotiate, maybe get their feelings hurt and learn to cope.
Right. You learn social skills the hard way sometimes.
Yeah. And video games, while engaging, are often much more structured. The rules are set. Conflicts might be adjudicated by the game itself. It's different. Less messy, maybe, but you miss out on some of that organic social learning.
And then there's social media, which is just designed to grab and hold your attention, right? That stat about nearly half of teens being online almost constantly is pretty wild.
It really is. And these platforms are masterfully engineered for engagement. Likes, comments, infinite scroll. It starts so young now, too. You see toddlers with iPads.
Which raises worries about conditioning their brains really early on. You mentioned the dopamine loop. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. So dopamine is a chemical in our brain linked to pleasure and reward. When we do something enjoyable, like getting a like on a post or winning a level in a game, we get a little dopamine hit.
Feels good, so you want to do it again.
Exactly. It creates a feedback loop. These platforms provide constant little bursts of dopamine, which can make them feel quite addictive. Over time, it can potentially make other activities, things that offer slower or less immediate rewards, like reading a book or having a long conversation, feel less appealing. It might even impact attention spans.
So it's like we sort of stumbled into this situation. We got really focused on protecting kids from physical dangers, maybe over-focused.
Yeah, keeping them indoors more, restricting their independent movement.
And at the same time, we pushed them towards this online world without fully grasping its own risks.
The irony is pretty stark, as Haidt points out. Real-world dangers for kids were often decreasing statistically, but parental fear, maybe fueled by media, led to less freedom. And that pushed kids online, where they face different but significant risks.
Like cyberbullying, harassment.
Exposure to harmful content, predators, intense social comparison. He shares some really worrying statistics about how many teens, especially girls, report unwanted sexual attention online, sometimes weekly. It's definitely not a risk-free environment.
Okay, this paints a pretty concerning picture. But Haidt doesn't just diagnose the problem, right? He proposes some actual steps, these 4 norms.
Yeah, he offers 4 key suggestions framed as societal norms we could try to establish collectively. The first one is no smartphones before high school.
So basically delay giving kids that constant internet access in their pocket until they're, say, 14.
At least 14, yeah. Some in the UK are even suggesting waiting until 16, the end of secondary school. The idea is to protect crucial developmental years.
Okay, norm number 1, delay smartphones. What's number 2?
Number 2 is no social media before 16.
Separating social media from just having a phone? Why 16?
It acknowledges that social media platforms carry unique risks, especially during those really sensitive early adolescent years. The social comparison, the performance pressure, the potential for addiction and exposure to damaging content. Delaying it gives kids more time to develop a stronger sense of self first.
Makes sense. Okay, number 3.
Phone-free schools. And not just banning them in the classroom, but bell to bell. Phones away for the whole school day.
Wow, that's a big one. The goal being
to reduce distraction, obviously, but also to really encourage face-to-face interaction during breaks, lunch hallways, to make school a place of actual social connection again.
Right, get them talking to each other instead of scrolling. And the 4th norm?
The 4th one brings us back to the beginning. More independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world.
So actively pushing back against the overprotection.
Exactly. Letting kids take age-appropriate risks, learn to navigate the world on their own more, build resilience. He talks about things like the let grow experience, encouraging parents to let kids try things independently. The idea of bruises, not scars, that minor bumps are part of learning and growing.
It feels like these norms would be hard for one family to do alone, though. If all your kids' friends have phones.
That's a huge point Haidt makes. Collective action is key. If lots of parents in a community or school agree to delay phones or social media, it becomes the norm, and kids don't feel so left out.
Strength in numbers.
Precisely. And the encouraging thing is, there is a growing awareness. Parents, educators, even some politicians are starting to talk about this seriously. We're seeing movements in the UK, Australia, the EU, Brazil, and even some US states starting to look at policies around phones in schools or age verification online.
So maybe some momentum is building. And Haidt also mentions potential regulation, right? Pushing tech companies to prioritize safety over just engagement.
Yeah, that's part of the conversation too, making platforms safer by design for kids. He also points people towards resources on his website, anxiousgeneration.com, for parents and schools looking for guidance.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up our deep dive here,
Yeah.
we've traced this huge shift in childhood driven by technology, looked at the worrying links to mental health declines.
And explored these potential pathways forward, these four norms, and the idea of collective action to try and, well, rewire childhood back towards a healthier balance.
And hopefully for you listening, thinking through this gives you a clearer picture of what's been happening and, maybe how it affects the young people in your own life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which leads to maybe a final thought to leave you with. Technology isn't slowing down, right? Change is constant. So what other big shifts might be coming for childhood?
That's a big question.
And maybe more importantly, how can we get ahead of the curve this time? How can we be more proactive in figuring out how to integrate new technologies in ways that actually support kids' well-being rather than undermining it? Definitely check out the resources at anxiousgeneration.com if you want to dig deeper or get involved.